Tonight we're supposed to have this conversation of what it means to be an Alabamian. In talking with Shelley about this, there are a lot of differences in what it means to the two of us, primarily because of a lot of the experiences that we've had in areas like race and civil rights, family, education, relationships, and we'll hopefully get into some of that a little bit later. It struck me, though, as we were thinking about this, that perhaps most of the people in this room, if not all, would agree that there are a lot of things that we would all feel is a part of being an Alabamian. And I think the reason is we all deal with a lot of the contradictions, a lot of the dichotomy of Alabama. Good examples is we all love our universities, but we're frustrated by our K through 12 struggles. We're all very proud of the success we've had in medicine and science and business, and yet 25% of the population of the state lives in poverty. We're all very proud of our sports teams, particularly college football, and yet we're frustrated to be in a state that has major health issues like diabetes and access to care. I know I'm preaching to the choir because this room's filled with Alabamians who understand these contradictions and who spend a great deal of their time through organizations like Alabama Possible trying to enhance our strengths and trying to improve our weaknesses. And we certainly appreciate that. Those are my sort of general comments. Shelley, I know we're going to get into some specifics later. What does it mean to you to be an Alabamian?
Thank you very much. First, they shouldn't have fed me before I come here. I'm absolutely proud to be an American. I'm proud certainly to be an Alabamian, and I'm proud to be here talking with you tonight and the audience here. And first I want to say this to you. It seemed as though I met this guy 50 years ago. For whatever reason, our relationship, heard his name, seen him from time to time, but it made me feel good for him to walk into my office, and we sat down. First time, shook hands, and the second time we hugged, and we became very, very close in a very short time. So that is what I bring to the table. I believe that although we have the problems, no question about it, you use the term civil rights. That's one that I try to stay away from because that is not where my heart led me many years ago. But it was the rights of all human beings, all people, all walks of life. So if I have done something that wants me to be here tonight and sit and talk with you again publicly, I'm honored and proud to be an Alabamian.
Good, good. You know, one of the areas that you and I talked some about that we have very different experiences in is race and human rights. I think any Alabamian in our generation has experienced the inequality as well as hopefully major improvements toward equality. I know, having grown up in Birmingham in the 50s and 60s, I certainly observed a lot of the inequality, whether it was separate restrooms or seating areas or water fountains or whatever. And in the early 60s, when I was early teenager, I watched a lot of what was going on right here in downtown Birmingham, and a lot of those participants were my age. But I only watched it on television, like most Americans, rather than being a part of it. Shelley, your experiences in that regard were much different. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Bill, I was born right in the Depression. As a matter of fact, I'm possibly close to one of the oldest guys in this room tonight. I'm over 80. I know I look good. But most importantly, I was born in that period right after Herbert Hoover, the year he went out, 34. And I became a homeless kid in 1941. I became a street kid here because of ignorance. We talk about lack of education and the like, but witnessing the murder of my mother, our mother, it was 4 boys. But coming up and into the streets in 1941, not knowing exactly, experiencing all of the little things. I was born on my birth certificate, says colored. It doesn't say black, African American, it said colored. Coming across the mountain and coming in this area, it was rather different. Fear, I was afraid. I was a little boy, 7 years of age when I came out into the streets of Birmingham. But I was 1941, I ended up over on Euclid Avenue, Crestline, there at Stringfellow Stables. And then 1943, I had an experience that many people didn't know and don't know today. 1943, in Birmingham, Alabama, in this area, I was taken in by a family who happened to have been white, Clyde and Betsy Smith, up on Highway 78. And they hid me in a basement, but they wanted me to go to school because Robert Holmes, by the way, he finished Alabama A&M, and there's a Mamie Laban Foster before I left Rosedale. This teacher, my first grade teacher there, said if you learn to read, if you get a good education, you can be anything you want to be. Well, I carried that, and because of that, from Rosedale out to Crestline and then to Clyde and Betsy's house up on Irondale, they wanted me to go to school. But they taught me something while hiding in that house in 1943, 1944, 1945. No one knew that I was a little Negro boy living in that basement, going into Irondale Colored School. And I was living in a different world in Birmingham, Alabama, in this area. But there was one thing that I was taught, not to let hatred take root. That's one thing that I was taught. And I didn't say that I did it, but somewhere, something happened to me. So I hid that part and came to where I am today, understanding that I am African American, but I am a human being. I'm a child of God. And with that being said, I fought through the years to do that, and here in Alabama, I didn't run. Many people, I had the opportunity to go to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, all over the country. I've done every opportunity there is. Boy, man, I became the director of PR for Otis Redding. I did lots of things in my life, but I always stayed in Alabama because I love Alabama. And where I am today, because of love, not hatred. So I think that's where I like to deal with things in my life. If this is the last speech I make, or last talk I make, it'll say that I came through with love, not hate.
Well, terrific. You touched on this a little bit with your family. Well, here's where there's a major difference in what it means to be an Alabamian with Shelley and me. I grew up here in Birmingham, middle class, sort of leave it to Beaver, father knows best, Brady Bunch kind of family, very common. Wouldn't trade it for anything. For the last 40 to 45 years, my extended family has just been terrific. My wife Walker, my 2 sons, daughters-in-law, all the in-laws, like the Nilsons. It's just been a wonderful experience for me, and it's been a very big part of what it means to me to be an Alabamian. Shelley, I know from your book, and by the way, I urge everybody to read this book about Shelley's life. It's fascinating, and I'm going to talk a good bit about it as we go through this evening. But Shelley, I know you didn't have quite the same experience, and I'd like for you to share some of that with us.
No, as far as family, my family was split, really totally split in 1940. We were actually split. My two younger brothers were given away to a plantation in Scuba, Mississippi. I didn't know where they were. My older brother had left Homewood, Rosedale, 2 years before I did. I ran into him out at Stringfellow Stables. There was no family thing. Matter of fact, my mother died in 1939, and Aunt gave us away, had us then, and gave us back to our father, who never went to prison because she was Negro. There was no charges filed for what he did. But no, there was no family. But there's one thing that I always yearned for was family. Oh, that's one thing that I missed. I yearned for that. What you're talking with your wonderful wife, which I know very well, and Claude and Kate and others. I know these people, but I didn't have that type family. But I reached out and found people who offered the love for me. They didn't look like me, some of them, but at the same time they showed love and I gave love. In other words, I believe in order to receive love, you got to give love. So for some reason, that little homeless kid, no one knew who I was, but that's what I saw then. So there was no family. Long story, it's in the book there. But let me give you an example. My wife Doris is here. My oldest daughter Shelley is here. I'm very proud of that. But most importantly, it goes beyond that with me. I reached out with a great family of people in this state. And I promise you, give you an example. 2 years ago, I became very ill. And I was in a hospital, and I don't have that type of family you're talking about, but there's a guy whom met years ago. Every time I would open my eyes, each day at 3 o'clock or so, that one guy would walk into my hospital room, and I would see him crying and Stan. And that's Stan Lawler, who's sitting right there. Stan, that's a friend, that's a brother that I made there. So I have many of those brothers. I have many of those people in this state. And for an example, not the blood family, but I had family members. A.G. Gaston, by the way, great to me, although he was no kin, but he was a family. There were many others who became family of mine. So I'm a little different the background. I don't have that, but I do have one thing. I think somebody have said earlier, there's old spiritual that goes like this. There's something within me that holdeth the rain. There's something within me that banishes all pain. There's something within me I cannot explain. All that I know is there's something within.
Wow. We mentioned Shelley the Playboy earlier. Another experience that I had growing up, because my mother loved music, and I love music as well, was I would listen to this black radio station, WENN, back in the early 60s, and it's where I first was introduced to Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson and Mary Wells and Marvin Gaye, and the disc jockey was Shelley the Playboy. It was fabulous. So that was the first time we ever met. Shelley never met me, but I damn sure met him that way. In the book, Shelley the Playboy plays quite a role in the movement that was going on here in Birmingham. Shelley, can you touch on that?
Yes,
for a few minutes?
yes, I'm happy that you did. I didn't know you were going to ask that. So before I left the office, because very few people know of this, in 1958, long before you knew this, but I started I was something different in this area, because they'd never heard anything like Shelley the Playboy, who was talking to people.
Neither had I.
In other words, I was not a class communicator. I was a mass communicator. And so in the 50s, I had why Shelley the Playboy came about, by the way, this same little homeless kid that no one knew who he was. I happened because I could read well, and I had been to oratorical contests and the likes. I had made my way into radio. Not that I liked radio. I didn't even know I'd ever landed there. But I used what someone didn't know my background, and I hid that, and I began to talk from a spirit within me to all people. So in the 50s, Eugene Connor and others didn't know I was that same little boy was sacking groceries up here at Yieldings, up here on the corner. I was the grocery sacker up there. They didn't know that I was the little boy who was down at Schiff's Family Shoe Store down there. I was an elevator starter at Newberry's. You know, I was that same little colored boy they called. My name was Shurley, Shirley. So they didn't know that I had transformed to something else. They didn't know that that guy Shelley. Well, when I started on the air, whatever I did, it attracted so many people across racial lines. And the kids from Phillips High School, from Ramsey, which was all white at that time, Phillips and Ramsey and Woodlawn and West End, I would get on the air, and I would, in 1949, 50, 51, 52, hey, baby, hey, sweetheart. And you know, the phone ringing, and girls go, hi, Shelley, how you doing? Hey, sweetheart, how you doing, babe? And Bill Connor said, who in the hell is that calling these white girls baby? Well, so it didn't bother me the way people. So I became that. As a matter of fact, this in Birmingham you never knew. I didn't say this publicly, but it was in the newspaper 1958 because of my bad habits in bringing people together. 1958, KKK signs are posted on building. Negro radio station wanted to get off the air and stay off. That was because of my bad habits. In 1960, Friday, July 15th, this was in the Birmingham Post-Herald, deputies closed spot doing Negro show. People did not know that was me, but, and here's what happened. Back there, because of my bad habits, they started bringing people together. In 1960, out on Old Bessemer Highway out there near Jonesboro, I was playing a record hop. Negroes couldn't do this, you couldn't do this, but I was a DJ. And the kids wanted me to perform at a record hop, disco, and at Don's Teen Town, 1960. And I went out there were 800 kids who happened to have been white. These kids were there to see Shelley, the Playboy. And boy, we were in there, get out of that bed and wash your face and hands, you know. But we were jamming hard. And Don Mahoney came in, the owner manager came and said, Shelley, the Ku Klux Klan out there, they want me to send you out there, they're gonna kill you. And I said, Don, you're serious? He said, that's where they are. There they are right out there. You go look and see, but Shelley, I'm not going to let you go out there. I looked at the window, sure enough, there they were out there near the highway. They were burning across. And I said, what in the hell am I going to do now? And Ray Mahoney went to the microphone and says, boys and girls, there's the Ku Klux Klan out there. They said that they want me to send Shelley the Playboy out there, and those kids said, like hell. 800 kids who happened to have been white went out and jumped in the Ku Klux Klan and let me get away. So those are things that took place before y'all called the civil rights movement. There was activity in bringing people together, and that was what my intent was, to bring people. Education, education, education. Relationship, relationship, relationship. Communication, communication, communication. Loving one another. That was it. And that's what Shelley, I did into what you talked about in the 60s. Martin Luther King Jr. was a very close relationship of mine. And my record store was at 1607 Fifth Avenue North, right across from Kelly Ingram Park. Martin would come in there, Wyatt T. Walker, Ralph David Abernathy, everybody would come in to meet at Shelley the Playboy's record mart. I broadcast right out of the window, but everybody knew that I was not, because there's no such thing in my history, and Martin Luther King knows that I did not agree, there was no such thing as a civil rights organization. Not ever. The Montgomery Improvement Association, the NAACP, the SCLC, the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, none of them ever said they were civil rights organizations. They all said the mission statement was, we will commit civil disobedience in our fight for human rights. That was what it was. And so civil, my thing was dealing for the human issue, and that's where I'm so happy that you guys respect me enough to sit with me here tonight, and let's talk about the love of one another, human beings.
Part of what it means to be an Alabamian obviously has to do with our education.
Ooh, yes.
And similar to my family life, education for me was somewhat uneventful, although there was a turning point in my life there. I went to Banks High School, where I had a great experience, and while there, I had a guidance counselor named Bill Jenkins, who sort of sought me out and a handful of others who had decent grades and helped us all get scholarships. I ended up going to the University of Virginia and had a great experience, broadened my perspectives, broadened all my friendships, met my wife. So, you know, it was a turning point for me. I know you had a turning point as well in education, but somewhat in the opposite direction when it came to trying to get a scholarship or, you know, what you were hoping would change the inflection of your life. Tell us about that.
Let me say this, you know, and here again, I could complain, I could make excuses, I could have. Although I did all I thought the right things as a kid, I was homeless somewhat. I had to get out of Papa Clyde's house and Bess's house because they really caught that I was a Negro in that house, and so I came back into the streets of Birmingham. But I could read very well. I was an A student, but I was ragged as a can of crap. And what happened was I went to H Park High School, and the few people who recognized I was that little homeless kid, that little boy, it was Alma Vivian Johnson, who is now Alma Powell. That was her daddy was Bob Johnson, who was over the principal. Well, they recognized, but I did well as a student, but I wanted to do one thing. That first grade teacher, education was the key. It stuck in my mind, even to this day. Mamie Laban Foster, there in Rosedale. She was still teaching there, and I left Parker to go back to Rosedale, where I had become a homeless kid, and people had not seen me in years. My brothers we were all separated. My brothers were in school, but my oldest brother now got killed in Korea, and there I was back in Rosedale to finish Rosedale High School because I wanted to prove people that you could do it. Look what I had done. And straight A's. And it was time for graduation. And lo and behold, the principal, I thought I had the scholarship because of my grades. And Miss Jackson told me, said, Shelley, I'm sorry, but they removed your name from the scholarship list. And I said, why? And she said, you asked Mr. Montgomery. And I went and asked Fess, why am I denied a scholarship? I'm an honor student. I'm the president of the student government. Why? He said, Shelley, I'm going to tell you, you don't have a family background to support you, so I can't give it to you. So with that being said, that first grade teacher, Mamie Laban Foster, inspired me to go throughout this country, from Alabama, and preach and teach education throughout this country. And that's where you talk about the Maddie C. Stewart Foundation, for example. And by the way, it started in 2007, and we're in 49 states. The same little homeless kid, we're in 49 states. We have serviced over 25 million children and adults in these places with the choice buses that we put out there, over 2.5, 3 million. So that education, my thing is no matter where I am, It's about education. It's the key to it. And y'all forgive me because I'm going to say it. No, I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not a politician. I'm not a pimp. And I'm not a preacher either. So, but what I do is from love. It's about human beings. Remember, no hatred. It's about love. I think if there's no power in the present, there's no hope for the future. So it's about the power of education, the power of now. That's where the hope is. So I'm somewhat different, I guess, because I'm not but what is I saw Donnie here. So Donnie, I think I saw Donnie in here earlier. Yeah, Amo.
He's hiding.
Amo, his daddy, and Crawford Johnson, and I can go on through this house here with people, Ralph Bostein, the boy at Morgantown, and I can rap in Jack Alens, and I can go on through people in this area who, this little boy, who realized that I was more than just a disc jockey, but I was a guy who believed in helping and serving people. So I think that's what I am about education, and that's what I've seen from you, Bill. I watch you, listen to your sons, and certainly know your wife and the family, and I'm very proud to sit here and talk with you. Not as by the way, not as a white man, but as a man, a citizen of the state of Alabama. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Another area we wanted to touch on pretty quickly, because in my opinion, I think one of the real advantages we have in Alabama, and something it means strongly as being an Alabamian, is the ability to establish so many diverse relationships. You touched on that a moment ago when you were naming a lot of the people that you've been friends with. But when I think about throughout my life how diverse and substantial, deep the relationships are, whether it's family, friends, colleagues at O'Neill, people around the city and people around the state, at your place of worship, whatever it may be. Other states may have similar ability to establish those kind of relationships, but I will assure you no state does it any better than we do. It's just a part of our fabric that we all tend to want to have relationships. We want those relationships to be real, and we want them to be diverse. I know that's been a real strength and a real passion in my life, and I know in talking with you and reading about you, you feel the same way. Tell us about your relationship.
It's fear. What happens is people are afraid to say and respect each other, to go up and talk with each other. We're afraid, says, I can't do that because you're black. I can't do that because you're brown. I can't do that because you're white. And we make excuses, and the fear factor is there. So once you remove that fear factor, if you remove that, then you can move forward. In Alabama, as I stated, I travel throughout the country. I speak throughout this country, by the way. And I'm an ambassador for Alabama. Nobody told me to do this, because when I go throughout the country, they say, you mean to tell me that you in that God-forsaken state of Alabama, how can you do that? And I said, well, wait a minute, you have me speaking. You have me yes, but how do you do that? Can you go out at night? I'm serious about that. So what is happening is we're approaching it trying to, as a group, but one thing for sure, I don't mind saying to people, there's no fear in love. If you love, there's no fear in it. You understand? Really, that's it. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about. Now, if you really want to get something started and talk about diversity, form a damn committee. If you really want to mess it up, form a committee. Form a committee. you know, like a guy says, guy walked into the church and he walked in, he was homeless, he was naked, he almost naked, rather smelling real bad. He walked down through the church, walked to the altar, the pastor looked at him and he said, I'm hungry, I'm homeless. And he's smelling bad, and 2,000 or 3,000 people saw him, and the pastor says, officers, would you lead him to the back door there, and y'all come back. After service today, we're going to form a committee to study the effects of hunger. So, in other words, everything there is, if you don't let it, don't be afraid, don't get it in committee. I can tell you now, no one knows how, there's a guy a little short about this high, but I didn't know who he was. I met him, and he and I became very close, and we started an organization in this town, in this area. I don't think any of you know about it. But I went into his place. He's a beautiful office. He's a college, university president. I walked in, sitting down, talking with him, and he says, in 3 weeks, he and I became so close, and we started a thing called the Birmingham Kitchen Table. That's Andy Westmoreland. We formed that because of our relationship. I became ill. The guy, bless his heart, Rob Burton, and I don't know whether anybody knows Rob Burton, but Rob, I wake up in the hospital and there's a guy praying, kneeling beside my bed a couple of years ago, praying and crying. I looked over and said, what? That's Rob Burton. And there Rob Burton, not afraid to sit and kneel and pray with me. You understand those? And Stan and others who came. So they're not afraid. They were not afraid to love. We're not afraid to love each other. So that's what Shelley Stewart hopes to leave this city and tell the people in this country. Alabama, yes, we make the biggest mistake because everything we put in a committee, or we put it in the politics. And if you want to mess it up, put it in that committee, put it in politics. But if you do what you guys are doing tonight, y'all will move forward. This is the way to do it, people.
Well, before we open it up for questions and hopefully some answers, we'll each make a couple of comments. Summarizing for me what it means to be an Alabamian is I think we're part of a well-kept secret. I think that the perception, not only outside of Alabama, but quite frankly, a lot of times inside Alabama, is a lot worse than the reality. Much better job, as you said, of being ambassadors for our state. It's a state full of opportunity, but it's a state also full of a lot of issues. And it takes all of us, not necessarily a committee of all of us, but it takes all of us focusing on those areas that truly are scars, that truly are problems in our state, like poverty, and making it better. I'm not sure that in our lifetimes the perception is necessarily going to get better, but the reality is, and I think the reality already has. And quite frankly, I'm very, very proud to be an Alabamian.
I'm very, very proud to be an Alabamian. Thank you. Yeah, without any hesitation, yes, it is a best kept secret. I do think that we, in the state, we're talking at each other rather than with each other. I think that's one of the major issues there. My time left on this earth, I'm going to continue doing it with education. I believe telling you education is the key. The young lady that you recognized tonight, where is she? Raise your hand, baby. That young lady. Yeah, very proud of you. The education is the key to it. Education, the proper education will reduce crime, will reduce hatred. It will reduce many of these things. We have to do that, and really it will improve our way of communicating with each other. I think with this conversation tonight, if there's anything you do, say that there was a man sitting over there that made me a better person than I was when I first met him. I'm talking about Bill, by coming to me. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm very happy that you came into my life. And thank you for getting me in here tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.